to say on this subject, and I think it's because I have had the privilege of being able to go to doctor's appointments whenever something comes up in my body. Unfortunately, it is a privilege to have quality health care, and so a lot of these things that I'm going to tell you about today, I may have never even found out or known about just because in some cases these things were found by accident, or these situations only came up in a certain way, if that makes sense. So I don't know, I wanted to mention that, and we'll get into it. We'll talk more about that later, but anyway, the first thing I want to mention is something that has sort of boggled some of the minds of doctors and nurses that I've seen, but it's weird, so I'm hoping that when I tell you, you're not going to tell anybody. Can I trust you? Can I trust you? Can I trust you? Trust you to keep a secret? To keep a secret? Can you keep the secret? The first of many secrets. Okay. Well, I want to tell you that I sort of, kind of, don't have a pulse in my right wrist. And I know that sounds kind of crazy because you might be thinking, how do you have a working arm if you don't have a pulse in your wrist? And technically, I do, but it's very, very, very faint. Most doctors are not able to find it. Then they go to the other wrist and they can find the pulse, no problem. It's kind of odd. And so this was a curiosity to some of my doctors, and they ended up running some tests. And do you want to know what they found? Okay, I'll tell you. Apparently, the main artery I have on my right side that leads down to my wrist is all messed up. I mean, it's fine, but basically the way it was described to me is, instead of it being kind of like a straight shot from point A to point B, kind of like takes some detours. And so by the time it gets to my wrist, the blood flow gets to my wrist, it's very faint. And so for as long as I can remember, people have had a lot of trouble finding the pulse in my right wrist. Kind of weird. So anyway, I thought that was interesting. I thought you might like to know. And then on a completely unrelated note, I mean, it's kind of all circulatory. things that I found out, along with the weird artery thing. It was like this appointment where I found out so much when I saw my cardiologist for the first time. We'll get more into that too, but that's a kind of quirky, fun one. And as far as I know, it doesn't really affect me, at least right now. Like, it just looks kind of strange. But it happens all the time when I'm chilly and cold. But even if I'm just a tinge of chilly, it shows up. I'll have to point it out one time if it ever gets cold in this room. Okay, so I sort of prefaced this a little bit, but I want to get into it with you now. And I know I've probably told you about this already, but I want to tell you again, give you a reminder, and also give you a little more information. And there's something that I've been wanting to talk about that, I don't know, I kind of wasn't ready to talk about it when it first happened, and so I'll leave it there and we'll get into it. How about that? We'll get into it. Do you want to hear it? Do you want to hear about this? I know I didn't give you any information, but I just want to make sure that you're prepared mentally for what I have to say. Okay, well, since you're interested, as you know, probably, I have a heart condition. I have a heart condition. It is called a bicuspid aortic valve. And I found this out at the same time I found out about the weird artery and the nails and the whole thing. It's funny because I actually went to the doctor to check in about anxiety. I was having heart palpitations because I was really anxious in school. This was when I was 16. And luckily I had a very thorough cardiologist who did every possible test on me and discovered all of these things. I obviously had no idea what a bicuspid aortic valve was, and you might not either. So basically, an aortic valve is something that we all have, but typically, it has 3 quadrants. Like, if you imagine a circle, it kind of has, it's almost like a peace sign, except into 3 separate quadrants, if that makes sense. And that's just how a normal working aortic valve looks. For me, I only have 2 quadrants, and they call them leaflets. Kind of weird. But I have 2 instead of 3. The reason why that is a problem is because sometimes those leaflets can get too tight, and sometimes they can get too loose. You usually have one or the other. It's rare that you don't see any signs of anything for your entire life if you have a bicuspid aortic valve. For me, I have the version that expands, so over time, usually you will see that the valve will get leaky, and it's very common for people with this condition to need heart surgery. So pretty much since the day I found out I had this condition, I have been mentally preparing myself for the fact that one day I might need a valve replacement. And that's a whole lot to unpack and not something I want to do right now, but there's another piece to it that has been particularly trying for me over the years, and I want to talk about it because I had a really crazy experience at my last cardiology appointment. And so again, I have been seeing my cardiologist since I was 16. I am 29 now. It is something that you have to get checked on regularly because, again, at a certain point, most people do need a replacement valve. That's just how it is. And this is, by the way, do you want to hear an interesting fact? Okay. This is actually the most common heart condition around, period. 1% of the population actually has a bicuspid aortic valve, but unfortunately, a lot of people don't know it. Again, they found mine by accident. I went in for anxiety and they found this. But I have a quick little story that I want to share with you, and it's personal, and it's my own experience, and if it's helpful to anyone, to you, to anyone, I don't know, but I just feel like it's worth sharing, and also just nice to get out, talk about it a little bit, right? So, basically, when I was 16, when I found out about this, I was told that having children would be very, very difficult. Basically because during a normal pregnancy, your aortic valve expands, and it expands an unpredictable amount. There's no telling what an individual person's experience will be like, so it is safe to say that there will be expansion of the valve. That is a big problem for someone like me who already has a valve that is, I don't want to say too big, but it's bigger than the average, bigger than somebody with my weight and height and frame and all the rest. Because again, over time, it expands. So from a very early age, I had just sort of like put this to bed in my mind. I was like, well, then I'm not having kids. And at that time, it's not like I knew if I wanted them either. But it was just easier for me to say, no thanks. It's risky. It's risky. And so that was my first cardiologist. When I moved to New York, I got a new one. And the last appointment I had with my cardiologist in New York was one of the worst appointments I'd ever had. Do you want to know what he said to me? He said a lot of things to me that made me really upset, but this one hit me in a weird way. I'm going to tell you. Again, deeply personal, but he told me that I needed to have a child by the age of 30, and if I didn't, it would not be possible. He gave me a time frame, which at the time was like less than 5 years, and told me it's basically now or never. And the way he told me was just so crass and so matter of fact. He had no bedside manner whatsoever. And I cried, and it's weird. It's really weird because I don't have many maternal bones in my body, and for pure anxiety alone, I don't think I'd be capable of carrying a child with my own body. But just having somebody have that power over me to tell me when I can and cannot have a child of my own really hit me in a weird way. I really struggled with that, just having something like that taken from you. And that's my personal experience, right? Like, I'm only speaking for myself. And even to this day, years later, I'm still like, I don't think I want a kid, but anyway. So fast forwarding, I moved to Vermont, and I get a new cardiologist. And this was the first time since I was 16 years old that I had a technician who was a female, a cardiologist who was a female, basically the entire team of people I saw were all women. And I don't want to make this a men versus women thing. That this is just the story I'm telling based on my experience, but the level of care was night and day, and it makes me sad that so many people have bad experiences with doctors, or maybe not even bad, but uncomfortable or frightening, or just a lack of compassion and thoughtfulness. I think that's actually very common, and across the board it's common with any kind of doctor, and it makes me really sad because what happened at my last appointment was like a breath of fresh air. I was able to get a echocardiogram and a sonogram without crying, without feeling vulnerable, without being in pain. I didn't realize I could have that exam and not be in pain. It was crazy. And then at the end, do you want to know what my new cardiologist told me? Well, she asked me about family planning and if I had any interest in having kids, and I said, well, I'm almost 30, and I was told that once I hit 30, that's no longer an option for me. And when I tell you the look of horror on her face and on the faces of everybody in that room, I knew I just said some wild stuff. Like, they were floored that my previous cardiologist told me that, and even my first cardiologist. And granted, medicine continues to evolve and improve every day, but not to the degree, not to a crazy degree in the amount of time that I've been in this sort of system. And I think, unfortunately, the doctors that I've had previously were just not very well versed in women's health and all of the things that go into that. It was easier for them to just kind of write me off and say it's not possible, don't bother. And if I had a cardiologist when I was 16, like the one I have today, it's very possible that my life would be different, or I would at least have less anxiety about my condition and what I can do with it. She left me feeling like a normal person, like I could do whatever I wanted, and we would work through it and talk through it and make plans for the things that needed modification. But my other doctors didn't really make me feel that way, and to be honest, it's sad. So I've been kind of processing that for a little bit, and I don't know, I just kind of wanted to share it today. So I don't know what the future holds, but what I do know is that I'm almost 30, and apparently me and my body are still pretty iconic and still pretty capable. And in fact, my numbers, my measurements on my valve are looking really good, and they haven't changed much since I was 16, which is a really big deal. A really big deal. And every time I go and I get one of these tests, they tell me that it would be okay and common for me to start seeing leaking. I wouldn't see it, but they would see it, right? But they try to sort of prepare me in case that happens, and so far it hasn't happened. So I'm really happy with where I'm at, and I just wanted to share that with you. Sorry, that was a long story. I have other things I want to talk about, but kind of got carried away. Okay, so moving on. Getting off the heavy heart conversation. Do you want to hear something about my knees? Totally unrelated. Do you want to hear about my knees? My knees. doctors, but for me, my puppies love to dislocate. I'm sorry if this is not super relaxing. But I went to a doctor about this when I was young because it was affecting me and my work. I did a lot of dancing and physical activity when I was younger, so it was important that I figured out what the heck was going on with my knees and what I could do. And do you want to know what that doctor told me? I've had some pretty careless doctors, but this doctor told me as a 13-year-old girl, or sorry, maybe I was older by the time I went and actually saw this doctor. I think I was maybe 17, around 17, 18. This doctor told me that I was built like a dog. That's right, he said I was built like a dog based on how my hips and knees aligned. And he mentioned something about how it's really common in dogs that both of their hips and knees have issues, but in humans it's not common. And so he said I'm kind of like a dog. And I can tell you I wanted to punch him square in the face when he told me that. Like, be for real, you had to say that out loud. But anyway, let me tell you something else about these knees, okay? Most of the time, the dislocating is fine because it just goes right back in. It's whatever. I shouldn't say it's whatever, like, so flippantly, because it actually is extremely painful, and I have, like, mini blackouts every time it happens, but that's besides the point. Generally, I just get up and walk it off and I'm fine. But the last time it happened, do you want to know what happened the last time my knee dislocated? Well, I ended up in the hospital, and then I ended up having surgery. And the way it happened was so silly. I was just trying to feed the birds, and I slipped on my deck and I fell. And when I fell, some really gross things happened in my knee that I'm not going to share with you. If you've seen all of my videos, I think I mention exactly what happens at some point, but I give a trigger warning because it is truly disgusting. Okay, why do I have hair in my mouth? There's no cat near me, and yet it's just... Anyway. So it's pretty gross what happened, and I ended up needing surgery. And I got a knee reconstruction done. They like reshaped my knee, and they gave me someone else's MPFL, which is a ligament similar in near the ACL. When I say someone gave it to me, it was a cadaver ligament. And I'm so grateful to have it. But yeah, so I'm gonna skip over all the gross surgery stuff, but I do want to tell you something that's pretty exciting about all of this. Do you want to hear it? After all of that chaos, I'm really happy to say that I am now slightly over 1 year post-op. 1 year post-op. It's been over a year since I had my surgery, and 6 months since my last physical therapy appointment. It's a pretty big deal. It's a pretty big deal. I am back into doing pretty much everything that I've done before, and I just can't believe I'm here. With how difficult that recovery was, and how hard the physical therapy was, and how often I cried and cried and cried and felt such desperation. My knee is healthier and stronger than ever, and I am going to do everything in my power to keep it that way. That is my hope, my ultimate goal. There's one more thing that I want to say about my knee. If you'll listen, if you're interested in hearing it, or before, I guess you just become less malleable to it. That's why when you have this surgery, they want you, I mean, ideally, they want you in physical therapy the next day. Like, they want you working it right away. And I had a really trying recovery in a lot of ways, and so I just wasn't at the place I wanted to be, despite the fact that my physical therapy was wrapping up. And basically, I was told that there might be some slight improvement, but not to expect anything significant, because she didn't want me to get my hopes up, and said it was not common to see a lot of progress past that window of time that I was reaching, which was 6 months. And so I mourned that, and it's not to say that I wasn't grateful for the progress that I had made, but again, it was one of those moments of feeling like someone was taking something away from me again, and knowing that my life would be forever different because of it. Because when it's really hard to explain if you've not experienced this, but to have one leg that is more capable than the other, it kind of makes a lot of things more challenging, and definitely noticeable. And so again, was incredibly grateful for the progress, and I don't mean to be ableist in any way whatsoever. It was just on a personal level. Like, I had been working so hard and was not seeing results, and was in just such a bad place mentally that it really just hit me hard. And but I decided to not let it get me down, and said that I would try everything in my power to get myself back to where I was, if it was possible. And so as soon as PT ended, I started going to the gym all the time, got back into yoga. I mean, I worked out at the gym yesterday and did some stuff today at home. Like, I've just been trying really hard to keep my legs strong, to keep working it, to do cycling and walking, jogging, like weights on my legs, and again, yoga, elliptical, all this stuff. And I noticed today that my knees are pretty much the same again. Like, the amount of flexion I have is almost identical. Like, the difference is pretty negligible. And so it was a huge improvement from where it was 6 months ago. And I'm just, can I tell you something? I'm really proud of myself. Because I literally worked through blood, sweat, and tears to get here. And I feel like I bring it up a lot, but it has been such a big part of my life in this last year, and so it's hard for me to ignore. To not bring it up would be not being honest with you when we connect and talk, because it has been such a roller coaster of a year of recovery. And so today I noticed that and felt really glad for where I'm at. So anyway, let's move on to a few other body parts before we wrap this up. These are a lot less heavy. These next ones kind of just quirky fun things. I don't want to say fun, none of them are fun to me, but a lot lighter than the last few topics. So I think you might know this, but I have tinnitus. I'm just gonna rip it out. I'm just gonna come right out with it. I have tinnitus in both of my ears. And the reason why, have I told you the reason why? Or at least why I think? Well, there's kind of two reasons that I think, but I could be wrong. It's hypothesis, really. So, I'll tell you. Don't worry, I'll tell you. The most obvious thing would be, the reason why I have tinnitus is because of all the loud music and concerts I've been to. You would think that. And part of me still thinks that, but I've gone to multiple ENTs to try to figure this out, and every time I've done a hearing test, they've told me I have perfect hearing, no eardrops, no. So, I don't know, but I did find out when I went to see an ENT that I have something called eustachian tube dysfunction. Eustachian tube dysfunction, eustachian tube dysfunction, trying to make these things sound relaxing. And so your eustachian tube is in your middle ear, so it's not accessible externally. It's past the eardrum, so it's like pretty far in. And a eustachian tube dysfunction could mean that there is inflammation or fluid buildup. It's sinus related, and another secret about me is that I have crazy sinus problems, so it makes sense. It makes sense that there would be inflammation and swelling and buildup and all the rest, right? And so I do think that the tinnitus is most likely related to the eustachian tube dysfunction. The first time I saw an ENT, I was prescribed steroids to see if that was truly the connection, and the steroids did stop my tinnitus for a few days, but the second I came off the steroids, it came back. So I do think it has something to do with swelling and inflammation, and again, my sinuses are crazy, and sometimes it's noticeable in my face. At least I notice it because it hurts, but like all up in here, there's always this sort of consistent swelling and pressure, discomfort, and, you know, other sort of sinusy symptoms. It's kind of gross. You want to know what else I found out? During one of my many ENT trips, I also found out that I have a slightly deviated septum, which literally is irrelevant to anything, I think, but just a fun fact. Just thought I'd share. Another weird thing that happens to me, I think because of sinuses, nobody can tell me if this is true or not. Literally nobody knows why this happens to me, but I'll tell you because maybe you'll know and maybe you can tell me. I often get what I refer to as mouth migraines. I get swelling and pain in my gums, particularly after I run or work out excessively, and it must have something to do with like blood flow and pressure and whatnot, but my gums hurt so bad it literally feels like a migraine in my mouth. Like it doesn't sound like that's a thing, but it truly, it is the worst. I mean, aside from an actual migraine, like it all sucks. Pain in the face just sucks, but yeah, kind of a weird thing. And then the last thing I'll say, facial related, is that I also have a pretty gnarly tongue tie. Let me see if I can show you. You see the tie that's holding my tongue down? Sorry if that's gross, but it's annoying because with like dental x-rays and things, it gets in the way. And I did have surgery to correct it when I was younger. They quite literally cut the tie and then it grew back. Apparently, I was supposed to do physical therapy for it, but at the time I had it done, the people who did it for me didn't tell me that. I had no knowledge that it was so important for me to like work it and do exercise or whatever, but someone recently told me that, and I was like, wow, that would have been great to know as a kid when I got that done, because it grew right back. And it hurt. Like, that hurt to do, and it hurt for a while. I don't want to do it again. So whatever, I'm tongue-tied. I don't think it affects my speech or anything like that. Like I said, it just gets in the way. Mostly during, like, dental things. I don't know. It's just kind of weird. So, anywho. I'm going to get into one more topic of conversation conversation. Again, it's pretty personal. I love to just spill the beans to you. I don't know what it is. I just talk. So I guess we'll end with a hard hitter if you want to hear it. This one is more about mental health. You want to hear about it? Okay. Well, as do most people, you know, I've dealt with some like anxiety, depression throughout my life. Like who hasn't? But I think you knew that already. I'm not uncomfortable talking about that. Like it comes up. But something you might not know that I haven't dug into a lot, I don't think, with you, is that I was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder, also known as OCD, and you probably wouldn't know it. It's fairly low grade, but well, my diagnosis was somewhat recent in the last few years. I've had it since I was a little teeny tiny kid, and I didn't know it because how would I have known what that was? And the way it manifests is so interesting. When I'm highly stressed, it comes out more, but it's mostly like mental chaos more than anything else. Ever since I was little, I would like follow these weird practices or rituals in my head where I would have to count every step I took or every line in the road that I or someone else was driving on. I would pick up on certain words or phrases that people would say to me, and I would start counting the number of letters in the word and keep alternating it on my fingers until it ended evenly on my pinky, like weird little rituals like that. And when I was, again, teeny tiny, I had this ritual before I went to bed where I would have to recite all of the things that I cared about, people I cared about, things I didn't want to lose, because I thought that if I didn't say them out loud, then they would be taken from me, or the people I cared about I would lose. Like really dark, heavy. For a little kid, I was like 7 or 8, and I did this for a long time. Just kind of like feeling like I needed to do it, or it'd be my fault if something happened to any of the people or things that I cared about. So weird stuff like that. And again, it came up more when I was like in a really anxious situation or like feeling a lot of anxiety. So anyway, that was diagnosed, and I know now like what's real and what's not, and when these tendencies come out, and that's like a good check for me of like, okay, you're in an anxious situation, like there's tools. So it's like I have the resources, the tools, the tips, the tricks, whatever, the whole thing, like it's all good, we're Gucci, right? But something that I thought was really interesting, just like as I was talking to my therapist about trauma and anxiety, panic, OCD, all the rest, you know what she told me? She wants me to try EMDR. If you aren't sure what that is, it is a type of trauma reprocessing that has something to do with your eye movement. It's like both physical and mental, and basically the point of it is that you like reprocess past traumas so that they don't like remain in your like physical body or your like emotional state, something like that. Because a lot of the issue I have with like anxiety and panic is that my body is like really leading the charge. It's not that my brain or my mind is saying that there's a thing to be scared of. In fact, sometimes, usually, actually, it's my body responding to some random stimuli. So anyway, I just thought that was really interesting, and I'm curious about it, and I'm considering giving it a try. I know about EMDR from Rach ASMR. She does EMDR, and she has said good things about it. It's just basically a different type of therapy, and I'm already in therapy, so it's like, might as well add that on. just to see if it helps with those types of things, because again, it's just like the anxiety and panic sometimes come out of nowhere, and like when one thing raises, all the other things raise, like the rumination, the obsessive compulsive thoughts, all of that. So, but like, I just want to say, we talked about a lot of stuff right here, right now, and I want to be really clear and to say that I, like, do not feel bad for me. Like, I don't want that to be the takeaway. I don't feel bad for me. I live a perfectly awesome, wonderful life, and the only time I think about all of these things happening in my body is like right now when I'm talking about it like this. So like, this doesn't affect my life. I do a lot of really cool things, like physical things, like 5K Tough Mudder Spartans. I'm like very physically fit. I have great friends, a great support system. Like, I don't want the takeaway of this to be like I am this just like sad story, you know what I mean? Again, just because I'm talking about it and it's this conversation, and I'm privileged to have good healthcare where I can go and get things looked at, and I mean, honestly, like, I could keep going. I have more that I could say, but most people do, you know? And if they don't, it's because they unfortunately don't have access to go and like make that doctor's appointment. And if you're truly healthy and you've got absolutely nothing going on with you, then congrats, kudos, that is incredible, that is amazing. I don't know anybody like that, but stay healthy. Like, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Because that is truly iconic. If it's the case, I could just ramble about all the little tiny things going on with me forever. But again, just please don't take it as anything other than I want to just share these things about me with you. It's in the background, you know. I get to do all the things. I get to function as I intend to and hope to and want to, and there are challenges that I face from time to time like anybody else. So again, I just want